My husband's Christmas gift unraveled his secrets and ruined our marriage forever. I never thought I'd find myself posting here, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. This Christmas has turned my life upside down, and I don't know where to go from here. I'm going to share the full story, so grab a drink and settle in. I, 32 female, have been married to my husband, Mark, 30 for male, for 7 years. At first, everything seemed perfect. We met in college, and we were that couple everyone envied. Romantic dinners, adventurous trips, spontaneous date nights, the works. But gradually, routine set in, and while we still loved each other, the spark dimmed. I found myself buried in a busy job and managing our home, while Mark immersed himself in his career as a software developer. This year, Christmas was supposed to be special. We had planned a big family reunion at our home for my side of the family, complete with decorations, food, and a festive spirit. My parents and siblings were flying in, and I wanted everything to be perfect. But beneath the surface, the stress was palpable, and our relationship was strained. Over the months, I started noticing odd things about Mark. He was frequently distracted, coming home late, and I caught him texting often, always closing his phone when I walked into the room. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. On the surface, he'd always been the devoted husband, supportive and caring. Yet in recent months, I felt a widening distance. As Christmas approached, my suspicions grew, and I even considered the possibility that he might be having an affair, but I couldn't imagine it. The night before Christmas Eve, I had planned a little surprise, a romantic evening for just the two of us. I lit candles, prepared his favorite meal, and even bought a small gift he'd been eyeing for a while. When he walked in, I could tell he was preoccupied. During dinner, he barely touched his food and kept glancing at his phone. My heart sank, and I felt like I was on the brink of confronting him about everything. After dinner, I decided to drop the facade and go for it. Mark, is everything okay? You've been so distant lately. Is there something you want to tell me? I watched his face tense up. He hesitated, and for a moment, I thought he might come clean. I'm just stressed with work, that's all, he replied. I could tell he was lying, but I didn't press further. Instead, I handed him the gift. To my surprise, he looked genuinely touched. He opened it and smiled, but as soon as he saw the item, his smile faltered. It was a smartwatch, something he had mentioned wanting. But instead of gratitude, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Then, the unexpected happened. The doorbell rang. It was odd for someone to come by so late, but when I opened the door, what I saw made my heart drop. There stood a woman, Alicia, 30 female, who I recognized from one of Mark's friends' parties. She was holding a neatly wrapped gift. Hey, is Mark here? I brought something for him, she said cheerfully. I felt my world tilt. Mark had mentioned her a few times as a friend from work, but I always dismissed it. My gut twisted as I forced a smile and called for him. I'd never seen her up close, but I could see the familiarity between them, the way she looked at him, the playful smile on her face. Mark quickly came to the door, and I saw his eyes widen in shock. Alicia, what are you doing here? He stammered, looking at me and back at her in panic. Just dropping off a little something for the holidays, she said, handing him the present. I stood frozen, my heart racing. Mark turned to me, and I could see the anxiety etched on his features. The air was thick with tension. Thanks, Alicia. It was nice of you to come, he said, trying to diffuse the situation. After a brief exchange, she left, but not before giving him a lingering look that felt like a dagger to my heart. Once the door closed, I exploded with questions. Who is she, Mark? Why is she here? His response was shaky, and the excuses came pouring out. She's just a colleague. We're working on a project together, and I thought she was done for the day. But I knew in that moment, his explanations were flimsy. It was not just about a colleague dropping by with a gift. It felt deeper, like peering into a window I had never wanted to open. I pressed harder. Mark, this isn't normal. What's really going on? You've been secretive, and now she just shows up unexpectedly? I could see the panic in his eyes. He took a deep breath and finally admitted, okay, fine. We've been working closely together, but it's strictly professional. I swear, you have to believe me. But I wasn't convinced. That night, I barely slept. I was stuck in a whirlwind of emotions, replaying the moments in my head, the late nights, the messages, and now this woman. Christmas Eve arrived with a heavy fog of uncertainty between us. When my family arrived, I managed to put on a brave face. We decorated the tree, laughed over old family stories, and ate a delicious holiday feast. Each time I looked at Mark, I noticed the tension in his demeanor. He was trying hard to act normal, but the cracks were starting to show. After dinner, we gathered around the living room for our traditional gift exchange. I handed out beautifully wrapped boxes, all while feeling like I was playing a part in a play where the leading actor was breaking down behind the scenes. Each time Mark opened a gift, I felt a pit in my stomach deepen. My family was oblivious to the storm brewing between us. When it was finally Mark's turn, he opened the carefully chosen gifts from my parents, and they watched him with fond eyes. But the air was thick with unspoken words between Mark and me. He opened my gift with a smile that barely reached his eyes. I could sense the growing chasm widening between us. And finally, after the last present was opened, we found ourselves alone in the kitchen. "Mark, we need to talk about Alicia," I stated firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. The look on his face confirmed my fears. He was trapped. I leaned in closer and whispered, "You need to be honest with me. I can feel it in my bones that something is off." Before he could respond, my phone rang. It was a message from an unknown number. I rolled my eyes, expecting it to be spam, but when I opened it, my heart jumped into my throat. It was a picture of Mark and Alicia together at a coffee shop, a candid shot that screamed intimacy. The caption read, "Happy holidays, lovebirds. Can't wait for our next project." My breath hitched in my throat. I looked up at Mark. The color drained from his face. "What is this?" I held up my phone and he froze. The silence was heavy, suffocating. "Tell me the truth, Mark. What is going on between you two?" He glanced at the message and then back at me, his internal battle playing out in his eyes. Okay. We've been working together a lot, and yes, there's been some flirting, but it hasn't gone beyond that. I swear." "Flirting? You've been texting her like this, and it's just flirting?" I could feel the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "You let our life together sit on this precarious edge while you toyed with someone else's feelings? I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. I was feeling overwhelmed with work and..." He paused, clearly trying to find the right words. "Alicia made me feel alive again. But I love you." In that moment, part of me felt betrayed, but another part felt deep sympathy. We were both lost, caught in the currents of unspoken pressure and secrets that had built up over the years. Suddenly, the floor felt unstable beneath us. "What else are you hiding, Mark?" He sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "There's more, isn't there?" I pressed, stepping closer. "There's something else you're not telling me." Apparently, that was all it took. He ran a hand through his hair, looking defeated. "Last summer, I went to a conference in Chicago and, well, I met someone, Linda. It was stupid. We didn't sleep together, but we connected in a way I didn't expect. It felt so easy, and I thought I could come back and put it behind me. But..." He trailed off, staring at the floor, guilt etched all over his face. I was stunned into silence. "So you went behind my back? The man I trusted? You were there for me through everything, and you couldn't tell me?" I didn't know how. I thought I could forget about it, and in the past few months, I hoped things would fix themselves with us. I felt like I was drowning. That year had been so hectic. I had been overwhelmed with work as well, often shutting down emotionally, hoping that time and routine would heal our relationship. Instead, I had faced my own struggles, while Mark was hiding his. "Mark," I said softly, trying to keep the tears at bay, "we've both been avoiding each other, but instead of communicating, we let our insecurities fester, and now look where we are." He looked up, a mix of guilt and sadness in his eyes. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I messed up. I thought I could just push through and make things right before it got out of hand. But I realize now, this was a terrible mistake. I was stuck in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, anger, betrayal, hurt. What does this mean for us? Do we just sweep this under the rug and pretend everything is fine?" I couldn't even imagine how we would move forward from this. He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I don't want to lose you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild trust. But we need to face the truth together. I can't do this alone. We need to start by being open with each other. No more secrets. That night, we talked deep into the early hours of Christmas morning, hashing out all our disparities, our disappointments, and our hidden struggles. Mark confessed he had felt stifled in our routine, while I admitted my overwhelming work had distanced me emotionally. Between revelations, I learned he had also been hiding credit card debt and his uncertainty about job stability, which had wormed their way into our lives. Both of us had cloaked our vulnerabilities, too afraid to show the cracks. Finally, we reached a tentative understanding. We agreed we'd need counseling to help sort through our feelings and rebuild trust. He promised to cut all connections with Alicia and anyone else who could be a temptation, as difficult as that would be. I laid out the groundwork on my end as well, admitting how hard it had been for me to share my own struggles with him. The sun rose on Christmas morning, and while everything felt far from perfect, there was a glimmer of hope. My family arrived at our house, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had unfolded the previous night. We put on brave faces, shared laughs, opened gifts, and tried to be present for the holiday. Amid the festivities, Mark even started to engage with my family, which warmed my heart. I was reminded of why I fell in love with him in the first place. But resentment lingered underneath the surface, and my heart still ached. The uneasy truce held together as well as it could, but each time I looked at him, fresh thoughts of betrayal and doubt would flicker back into my mind. I eventually pulled my sister aside and shed a few tears over a glass of wine quietly while my family mingled in the background. I don't know how to manage the next steps, I confessed to her. The holidays feel tainted now, and I'm not sure how to reconcile this. She listened, offering gentle advice about communication and patience. It's okay to take your time, sis. You're both wounded, and it's a lot to process. Just remember that healing isn't linear. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. As Christmas came to a close, I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but perhaps we could carve a path for ourselves, one step at a time together. Now, I'm here, reaching out to the community for support and perspective. Have any of you dealt with a situation involving secrets in a relationship? How did you navigate the aftermath? What are the best ways to start rebuilding trust after betrayal? Is it wise to enter counseling together, or should we first consider separate sessions? I need your thoughts on how to move forward.